just before vacation. Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Happiness Quest. My name is Jess Dutel from the Center for Business and Community Partnerships at Plymouth State University and from the PEMU Center thanks to the Service Learning Partnership.
And I'm Dr. Maria Sanders, Professor of Philosophy at Plymouth State University and CEO of Philosophy for Life. And today we're going to discuss happiness in our heads, so the cognitive side to happiness. And I'm immediately reminded of the philosopher John Stuart Mill, who actually stated that you can't directly pursue happiness. You have to pursue those things that bring happiness. So happiness becomes more of a consequence. And I think of him often when we think of the cognitive side of what's going on in our minds. So we brought our cognitive person with us today, in part to immediately draw the distinction between this physical mass of stuff that we all have in our skulls. We'll refer to that as the brain, but not the mind.
And we weren't the ones who came up with that term.
We did not. We're going to use that term. It's been historically, established. But the mind is what we're focused on today. So it's really the workings of the brain, the neurons as they're firing and so forth. Unfortunately, I do not have a prop that literally lights up, but I know they have those as well. So when you think about whether you're happy in the moment right now, are you happy?
Oh, I'm happy right now. I'm sitting with you, Maria Sanders.
There we go.
Yeah.
So if we think about happiness and what's going on in our brains as they're working, so the functioning of the mind, how much of this present moment is actually tied to your past or your future? Like, do you feel you're in the current moment, or is it a compilation?
It's a compilation. It's who I am right now, and what I'm experiencing has everything to do with the fact that I had a pretty good morning, right? I didn't stub my toe when I got out of bed. I woke up on time.
So things are going well.
Things were going well, and here I am, also looking forward to what's coming this afternoon. There's nothing in the foreseeable future that I'm worried about or anxious about, so I know, at least I think I know, it's going to be a pretty good afternoon. So I'm feeling good right now in relation to those two different experiences.
And that's a really nice way to lay it out, because when you think about it, even though we do strive to be present in our current moment, and there's a real value to that, I think we're probably missing a bit of the picture, the larger picture, if we don't acknowledge that we bring so much from our past to every present moment. And as a rational cognitive being, we always have the future right there in the mix as well. In fact, there's a famous Polish researcher that wrote this article on happiness and time that I've always found very interesting. His name's Tartowicz, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sounds good to me.
But what he literally said is, to think about living in just the present, we're actually missing a large portion of what the present is comprised of. So even though the present is consistently moving, there's more to it than that. It's a complex depiction. So if we think about memories and how memories play into our level of happiness, what's really interesting in the current research is there's relative agreement that none of our memories are accurate. I mean, and not where we're a little off, but it seems like we tend to embellish, make things sound better in our minds than what they actually were, or worse. But we don't seem to get it right.
And I relate to this. So today's my little brother's 30th birthday. And time passes so quickly if I think about, I feel like I was just holding him, and yet it's been 30 years. And so much has happened. And when we gather together, as recently as yesterday for a family birthday party, and we talk about our memories from our childhood. And this has been interesting for me to talk about these memories with my brother, because so often I will remember something that we both experienced in a different way. So when, we talk about our vacation that we took as a family to Washington, D.C., I have such beautiful memories of that vacation. And then he reminds me, don't you remember we argued for 12 hours straight in the car? And so that's so interesting to me.
Like which snapshots you hold on to.
Right.
Yeah, I have to admit, we do the same thing. I have two brothers and a sister. And we're spread out across the United States, literally. Like 2 of us are on the East Coast, 2 are on the West Coast. And it's always an interesting occasion when we all get together and start reminiscing. Because now you have 4 memories playing into, and again, I would assume none of us have it accurate, but very different memories of the same experiences we went through as children. So it's fascinating.
Our memories in our minds.
And then on that, we
alter
capture certain ones. When you think about what you take the photos of versus the moments you let pass without capturing them. Well, now fast forward 10 years or to our children. I always think this is kind of interesting too, that the memories that really are false memories that either we have ourselves or that we project onto our kids because they're looking at photographs. And they look at it so often they feel like they were there.
It becomes a memory, right? That's like when we show my 5-year-old pictures of our experience at Disney when she was 2, I wonder how much is she really remembering when she says, "Oh yeah, Mommy," and then we went to see whatever character, or how much is really from looking at those pictures.
The narrative she's been told.
Stories that we tell her, So it's funny. I wasn't sure if our conversation was going to lead here, but I did bring a couple props. So this is a shameless parenting moment in terms of capturing, right? I am the parent who takes, like my mother, ridiculous amounts of pictures because I'm trying so hard to capture those moments and those memories and not to forget. I also bring art that my children have created. I hang it on the wall in frames. So I feel like this is one of those bragging moments for parents. But all of these things that to me bring up these memories, right? But really about not just what the memory is, but how it makes me feel, that emotional reaction. And so when I'm having a low day, which today is not one of those, things like this, pictures from the family vacation, talking about those experiences really put me in a new frame of mind.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, that the psychologists have been looking at what they call working memory. And in working memory, it really plays off of the elasticity or the plasticity of the mind. So it's not just simply looking backwards and capturing a snapshot and getting hung up there, but being able to pull your memories from the past into your present moments and moving into the future simultaneously. That what they're finding is there is a direct correlation to self-reported levels of happiness with the ability to exercise this working memory. So when you draw from the memories of the items that your children have created, and yet you're projecting it into future moments of your own life, you're exercising that working memory.
I mean, talk about projecting it in the future. I have anticipated and really have thought through many times how I'm going to present this to my grandchildren, right? Oh, your mom did this when she was in kindergarten, and who knows if they're going to really care. But even thinking about what that future moment might be like for me brings me happiness.
Well, and even in what you select to save.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like which ones become those really important moments.
That's hard for me. I want to save it all.
Save it all. Well, and there is a value in distinguishing between what gets saved, that valuing of it, but a devaluing of what you decide not to. So it's a tough decision. Well, I brought a visual aid as well. Mine's a little bigger, so we'll kind of move this in between us, and we might have to temporarily move our head. But this is a canvas creation that several philosophy students, and they weren't all philosophy majors, they were in the philosophy club, a couple of years ago made this for me, and I thought it was very appropriate dealing with happiness. But in this conversation of how happiness applies to our cognitive self, what I find interesting with this is there's so many layers in this one item. I mean, clearly, like we were talking about with memory, I recall when this was presented to me, it was given to me in a classroom. There were 5 students present that handed it to me. And that memory, in fact, in my office, I have this hanging with a photo of the students presenting it to me because I tie those two. There's a connection. But there's even more layers to this. The reason they made it is they had invited me to speak on happiness at one of their meetings. And this was kind of a gratitude gift for speaking. But what you notice is they didn't go out and just buy something, they created it. So they were telling me about the evening that they got together to create these canvases and how much fun they were having, and they painted this entire mental picture for me. Of course, I wasn't present, so I'm using my imagination as they're using their memories, sharing this, and yet you have all that rich layering of the cognitive self, and in the end, we're all resulting with a higher level of happiness from it.
So every time you look at this piece, it evokes all of that.
All of that. You know, it's pulling memories. In a way, it's playing off my imagination because I'm filling in memories that aren't really mine, but shared narratives from students of mine. And then, of course, the theme is always a favorite of mine, being happiness.
Yeah.
So it does have a lot of those rich layers. All right, we'll move him back.
Yeah, we have to put our head back in a minute.
So when we think about how directly the brain is involved in our levels of happiness, an interesting phenomenon occurs that when the endorphins are released, like when you smile or when you laugh, in the brain can actually be fooled into thinking you're happier than what you are.
Yeah.
And I often recommend this even to my own children, that if you do have those days that you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you know, or you stub your toe as you're getting out of bed, you can actually force kind of the fake it till you make it philosophy. You can kind of force your brain or your mind to think that it's in a little happier state than what it is by forcing yourself to smile. You won't immediately be elated. It's not that drastic of an impact, but over time it does start to alleviate the more depressive feelings.
And that relates to the research that Amy Cuddy did on how your body language can impact your mood and how you feel either confident or not in different social circumstances. So,
well, and because of the direct correlation that it has with self-confidence and self-assurance, we're finding some other byproducts is individuals who smile more often and have this working memory of being able to take their memories but continue to move forward and not get hung up on the past. They tend to be more successful in their jobs. They tend to be, in a general, more successful in life, meaning they're able to achieve the goals that they set for themselves, is what we mean by success there. So it's no small matter being able to, in a way, bounce back. It's the resiliency thing again.
So fake it till you make it is an actual thing.
It's actually supported by research.
And it's supported by research.
Yes, that and it's such an easy thing. It costs us nothing.
And how healing also laughter is, right? So I've heard you share the story of putting on a comic show on the way to school.
Yes.
And just, even if you're having a low day, watching a program that you think is funny, listening to your favorite comedian, that can really shift everything in your mind in terms of your mood.
Yes, very, very true.
Yeah.
Because again, there is research directly tied to it. We tend to live longer if we laugh. You know, it has a direct impact on our physical health. It's not just simply our mental health. So the whole laugh out loud is its own medicine.
Yeah. And I grew up in a household where we laughed all the time.
We did a lot of laughing too.
My parents were concerned you either laugh or cry at life, and wouldn't it be even more fun to laugh, you know? And absolutely you have to cry sometimes and really feel that emotion. But at some point, they always reminded me, someday you may laugh at this, you know, and keep that in mind. And when you can laugh, then laugh, because it's so healing. So I make sure I have a deep belly laugh at least once a day. It's important.
It is important.
Yeah.
It really is. You know, and also when we think about memory, the accuracy of memories. We mentioned that we tend to embellish them, or we tend to downplay our memories, that they're never 100% accurate. You know, when you were talking about the laughing out loud and such, it reminded me of an exercise that for years I used to conduct in my philosophy classes in Texas. And it was a simple exercise where I would stage a theft in the classroom. Okay, I would bring in this really obnoxiously large purse, and I don't carry a purse. Anybody who knows me, I mean, it's everything I can do to remember to carry my phone around, let alone a big purse. But I would set the stage for a couple weeks at the beginning of class. I would always walk in with this obnoxiously large purse.
So they would notice.
And I would usually find something that has bright colors and maybe some flowers hanging on it. I mean, really my style. And yes, make a big deal. Sometimes I would maybe like half spill it out. So I wanted the students paying attention to this purse, so that around 2 weeks into the class, we could stage a theft, working with one of my colleagues, and this was at Lone Star College. He would come in about 5 minutes into the class period and just steal the purse. I would have it sitting on the side near where the door was, but far enough in where he'd have to take 4 or 5 steps into the room so that the students could see him. I always had some lecture I was giving that had the students' attention drawn towards the door, but behind me. And so they could see what was happening, but they would assume I didn't see it. And it was really interesting, even from a mental standpoint, the reactions that followed from that. In several classes, they never told me the purse was taken, which surprised me. And I'd even ask them, because I would have to like casually look.
I said, hello.
Yeah, I'm 10, 15 minutes in. I'm like, I know the purse is gone.
Yeah.
And when I asked them, do you know what
That's
they said? Why do you think they wouldn't tell me?
Well, does it go back towards the bystander mentality that, you know, sometimes you don't feel confident
It was a little bit of that,
because you don't really know.
No one else is reacting, so why would I react?
Yeah, or maybe she knows that person, so I don't want to look foolish if I say, oh, someone just took your purse. In the event that actually Dr. Sanders knows that person. I mean, what?
And yet it was neither one of those, and both of those would make sense.
Yeah.
No, what they told me is they felt it would be rude and
To
disrespectful to interrupt,
Oh,
because
that's
again,
interesting.
authority figure
Yeah,
in front.
That's interesting.
And so I did have to clarify that if that ever actually happened, interrupt
Please
me.
tell me.
Please
Yeah.
tell me.
Yeah.
But the whole exercise was designed for them then to describe the assailant, describe this individual who was a very close friend of mine, and a Marine, 6'2". I would put a sheet together with suggestions on it, like what kind of hat was he wearing? Well, he wasn't wearing a hat. And it was everything from a sombrero to a fedora. I mean, they weren't even like just baseball cap. And they would pick all these different options. And they always had the option, I don't know. Like, I didn't see it.
Suggestion.
They would convince themselves.
Yeah.
And if others around them said, oh no, you know, his shirt wasn't blue, it was red. If enough people said that, they started to believe. So memory is very fickle in that way. We can make suggestions, and the more we repeat those suggestions in our mind, we start to believe our own memories. I know as an attorney, when I conducted depositions, it was rare that I would ever get a full, accurate depiction of what happened from one individual. Even though they're intending to be completely honest, completely open, we don't see what actually happens. We see what comes through our lenses, you know, and our senses. So memory is an interesting thing. Since we're talking about the cognitive side of happiness, in addition to memory, another interesting area is attitude.
Yeah.
A positive attitude versus a negative attitude. And again, I can't help but think of the Stoic philosophers who believed that we really couldn't control the external world or things that were happening to us, but that we always had control over our attitudes and how we reacted to the things that happened to us. But when I think about how hard many people are on themselves mentally, I mean, the self-talk, we tend, as a human species, to engage more in negative self-talk than positive.
We are our own worst critics.
Oh, we are. And we know which buttons to push, you know, where it's really going to have the full impact. And it's really damaging. Because again, when we think of it in the context of memories, the longer I'm telling myself a certain message, I will start to believe it.
Sure.
And so if it's a positive message, I begin to believe that. If it's a negative message, I begin to believe that, even though neither one may be rooted in any sort of factual evidence whatsoever.
And usually the soundtrack just runs, and we're not always aware of the things we're saying to ourselves. And so in class, I suggest to students, you know, just be aware of your self-talk. What are you saying? Is it positive? Is it negative? Become aware of it. And if you catch yourself in that negative cycle, you know, interject. Say,
Stop
oh no,
it
you're
immediately.
trying.
Stop it immediately.
Yeah. And then give yourself some positive reinforcement. I heard you talk at a recent community event, and you were talking about this topic, and you said something that really resonated. When you hear yourself saying something internally that you would never tolerate someone else saying to another human being, that's an indication.
Right.
that it's damaging.
Well, and quite honestly, that was the technique that it took from me, because it's hard when you're both the antagonist that's instigating that talk, as well as the evaluator. So it's like, am I being too harsh on myself, or is this really an honest assessment? And it was that litmus test of, okay, but wait a minute, if this was, rather than me talking to me, the me and myself, it was two individuals separate from me, would I tolerate this conversation? And if not, then it shouldn't be a conversation you're having with yourself. So it is a good litmus test.
Criticism and self-reflection. But when what we're saying becomes damaging, and we wouldn't say that to another human being, why would we want to say that to ourselves? And as much as I talk about this with students, with youth I work with throughout the community, it's something that I have to really practice every day. Right? It's not something that all of a sudden, okay, I'm not going to engage in negative self-talk. No, it's something that you have to remain aware of, and
it's a practice behavior.
Yeah.
That it's similar. We're talking about the internal self-talk, but think of it when it is external as well. Sure. Complaining.
Yeah.
I can be sharing my negative self-talk. Now, quite honestly, I've never been prone to complain. I more likely will internalize it than share it externally. But I'll share a comical story that actually was very impactful for the student in the long run. But I teach a happiness seminar on campus here at Plymouth State University about once a year. And the last time I offered the course, each time there's an assignment in there that is called the 2-week challenge. That for 2 weeks they can take on something new in their daily routine or give something up. So sometimes they may decide, okay, I'm going to visit someone at Spear Hospital once a day. They're going to take on something new. Or I'm going to give up Facebook for a week. Or I'm going to give up all the extras on my smartphone. I'm going to use it just as a phone, but I'm not going to have all the apps and so forth. And there have been some interesting results from the 2-week challenge. But there was one student, the last offering of the course, that she said, I'm going to stop complaining for 2 weeks. She said, I complain all the time. And I have an initial one-on-one meeting with them when they're working through what the thing is that they're going to tackle, because then they have to keep a journal, and it's a pretty involved assignment. And I told her, I said, if this is a habit, complaining, to simply set our mind to it and say, we're just going to stop complaining, is probably not going to work. That before you know it, the complaints are going to kind of escape, and then you're going to be like, I blew my assignment already. I said, why don't you replace the complaints that you can't stop, the ones that you stop them. But if you can't stop them, replace them with positive affirmations. Turn it into something positive. And that's where the comical side came, because the first day she did this, and she said, I was having so much fun with it. She goes, I decided to start recording myself. So she would take her iPhone, and as she was walking across campus, like the one day we had just received a fresh delivery of snow, which is all too common here.
Oh, we're expecting more snow tomorrow.
I just heard that. Yes, I just heard that. But she had these brand new shoes on that she had just bought, and she didn't have boots on, and it wasn't totally unexpected, but sort of unexpected, the snowstorm. So she's walking across campus, and in the video, she shows me all these videos afterwards. You see her starting to complain. She's like, and it's snowing, and you can literally see the change in the look of her. She goes, but it's so great that I can afford to have shoes that are wonderful shoes. And she's like searching for these positive things. But about 2 weeks into it, it started to flow a little more. And she said that she felt a difference. I noticed a difference even in class, in the attitude and such, that 2 weeks of this was just long enough to start to shift. She hasn't fully established a new habit, but there is a shift in the awareness of the talk that's being put out there.
Transformed the way that she was seeing the world, really, too.
And the other students in the class literally brought it up too. They're like, well, we noticed you've been much happier. The behaviors seem more positive. So that's a challenge I would put out there to anyone who wants to try to mix it up in their daily routine. Just pick one thing, and I wouldn't do more than one thing, but pick one thing and stick with it for like 2 weeks. 2 weeks is long enough where it can start to make a difference, but not so long that it feels unmanageable.
Right.
And if you can, keep a daily journal, because it's really interesting to go back and see how you were feeling in the moment. on each of those
see
days.
The progress, too.
Exactly.
Yeah. What a fun story.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then when we think about the negative talk, without turning it to the positive, I can't help but think about stress and anxiety as well, because that's another huge area that ends up impeding our levels of happiness.
And that's in our minds.
It's in our minds.
Anticipating what the future is going to bring, worrying about
ruminating on it
mistakes.
too much
Yes.
before it even happens.
Overthinking these.
A lot of the
things.
what ifs that'll never occur.
Yeah, exactly.
We play it over and over in our minds. But what's really interesting in the research is it's actually not advisable from the level of happiness to remove all stress. What they recommend is to find your balance point. We've talked about balance in here before.
Stress can be good in terms of your
It keeps us on our game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it keeps us alert depending on the situation. So the real recommended advice is to stay busy, but not so busy that we start to feel negative and the anxiety starts to take over.
And my litmus test for myself is, what can I control? Am I worrying about something that I really don't have any control over? And if so, then I'm wasting a whole bunch of mental energy worrying about it.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good rule of thumb.
And
the other thing,
act.
And even if it is something that you could control, is it something you have control over now?
Exactly.
Because if it's going to happen either way, again, it's probably a waste of our time to spend too much time worrying about it.
And in terms of anxiety, I mean, for me, what has been really beneficial is mindful living, is meditating first thing in the morning, getting my bearings straight, and really putting out some intentions.
And this is an area that's getting a lot of attention here of late, because what they're realizing is that there's a direct link between resiliency and mindful practices. A lot of it's still pretty new, but it's an extension of the research on the plasticity of the mind, the growth mentality. And so that'll be an interesting area for us to watch and follow. Yeah.
But you need to know what works for you in terms of managing stress and
Exactly.
anxiety levels.
Well, I'm getting the cue that I think we're out of time for today. So I guess we can summarize this with when we think about embarking on our happiness quest as we're searching for happiness, is to really keep in mind what's going on in our heads.
Yeah.
To think happy, and we're halfway to being happy, if not more.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.